the transfer portal, showing no mercy, continuing to churn, a lot going on there. Over the course of the last few shows, we've played some matchmaker, we've made some predictions, we've talked about names jumping in there. Let's just sort of take an all-encompassing look at where things are right now in the transfer portal, because we're starting to get some direction from these guys as to where they're going and taking visits and things of that nature. So we'll unpack that right now. But really quickly, for those of y'all tuned in live, make sure you've subscribed to the channel, because the transfer portal's madness, college football playoff around the corner. We just gave you our prediction for the national championship on the live show. If you're watching on the one-off video, go check that out on the channel. Bottom line, we need all the sickos dialed in. If you're a college football sicko, make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate you so much for that. So a lot of quarterback movement as of right now across the wonderful thing that is the transfer portal. Darian Mensah, Tulane quarterback. I told you on this show I thought he was an SEC caliber kind of quarterback. He committed to Duke yesterday. Sounds like NIL was potentially a factor there. How about this? Duke and North Carolina during your Tuesday, December 11th, dominated the college football headlines, with Duke landing one of the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and North Carolina landing arguably the greatest coach to ever walk the face of the planet in the NFL, in Bill Belichick. So I think that's a massive pickup for them. We've seen the ACC be fairly wide open at times. I mean, heck, SMU won the deal their first year in the played for the conference title their first year in the conference, coming from the G5. You got a quarterback, you got a chance. Can change the whole complexion. Also, now we'll see what happens with Duke if they're able to attract some more talent behind having a quarterback of Darian Mensah's caliber. Speaking of commitments, you had Connor Weigman, who was a former 5-star out of high school, previously at Texas A&M, lost his job at A&M, and he is now committed to Houston. Now, to me, it's somewhat of an eyebrow raiser from a football perspective, because you say, okay, like, hey, Houston, they weren't that great offensively. Like, I don't know if I'm circling Houston as the springboard to a tremendous NFL career. Maybe, maybe not. For Connor Weigman, though, I think this is more of a just career reset, if you will. He played his high school football 30 minutes from University of Houston in Cypress, Texas. We'll say this, too. Just like we said about Darian Mensah, if you want to attract talent, landing your quarterback early on in the portal cycle, not a bad way to go and try and revamp that roster out there in Houston. So keep an eye on that one. Connor Weigman taking his talents out there. It's a 5-star quarterback now in the Big 12, a fairly wide open conference. So interesting things there when it comes to those portal quarterback commitments. One more quarterback commitment we saw was Thomas Castallanos last night. Before the Connor Weigman commitment, you got the On3 main account going off. You got Thomas Castallanos committing to Florida State. And we said this in our reaction video, but I'll say it again right now. You see the headline, Boston College quarterback commits to Florida State. As a Florida State fan, you're like, I don't know if that's exactly the headline I was hoping to see when it comes to our transfer portal acquisition. Like, I would have been cool with like a guy from the SEC or, maybe a bigger branded school. Thomas Castellanos got after Florida State 2 years in a row, especially last year where they beat Florida State, or this past season, I suppose. Thomas Castellanos, to me, with him going to Florida State, this is Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell doubling down on the offensive system they're going to have. Thomas Castellanos is not your pocket passer, not your guy that's going to throw it around the yard, but he is athletic as all get out. He is a slasher. He is going to fit perfectly into what Gus Malzahn wants to do in the run game. It's worth noting now, Gus Malzahn at UCF, his offense was 60% run. To me, this is Florida State trying to do simple better with Thomas Castellanos being their guy here going forward. So it looks like Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn have got their quarterback for 2025. Now, here's a quarterback that's not committed yet. We called our shot for him to end up at Mississippi State. Makes a lot of sense because of his former offensive coordinator, the head coach now at Mississippi State, and Jeff Lebby, who was previously at Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold now, it may not be as cut and dry as we thought. Okay, as of this week, it was reported by Pete Nakos and I believe the folks at Auburn Live, the Auburn On 3 site, that Jackson Arnold will be taking a visit out to the Plains, checking in with the guys out there on that staff with Hugh Freeze. I get this, all right? So while Mississippi State has the personnel from a familiarity standpoint for Jackson Arnold, the personnel on the field for Auburn, I think, is a little bit more built out. Now, it's not me telling you that Auburn is going to go win 10 games next year because of who they have on that roster. But I do think you look around and you say, okay, there's Cam Coleman there. There's a tremendous recruiting class coming in. This is a young roster that I think is right on the brink of doing some really good things. Quarterback guy in Hugh Freeze, like, they can have success with the right guy pulling the trigger in that RPO system. So Jackson Arnold, I think, would fit that system should he end up going there. Very curious now that it's not just an open and closed situation where he's going to Mississippi State. The further this progresses, again, I have no intel. I'm not telling you I know anything, but just from a human nature standpoint, as things progress, I wonder how that door opens for an Auburn to maybe land Jackson Arnold. We'll see. Again, I'm not selling my stock on him, former 5-star. I just think Oklahoma was a brutal situation. We've unpacked that before, but just keep an eye on that one. Deshaun Womack, previously an edge at LSU, he signed with Ole Miss. Former 5-star in the class of 2023, 6'5", 260 pounds. Dudes like him do not grow on trees. Don't look now, but Lane Kiffin, what did he do last portal cycle? Stock the trenches, baby. Big people move small people. Prince Leo Yellen, Walter Nolan. A lot of success stories in the trenches now with guys going to Ole Miss and playing in that defense. Deshaun Womack now, look at the raw ingredients from the talent perspective, from the attributes perspective, physically, would not be surprised if he was a guy that just kind of fit perfectly into that blueprint and was a guy that added to the efforts there defensively for Ole Miss. Again, that is a signature from what I understand for the good folks out there in Oxford. Micah Hudson, previously a 5-star plus wide receiver in this most recent recruiting class in 2024. He was at Texas Tech, did not see the field, I don't think, the way that maybe he believed he would or believed he should. He has hit the portal. There is a prediction out there right now for the previously 5-star plus wide receiver to end up at Texas A&M. That is per On3 Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos. So it's not a done deal, but there's a prediction right now for him to end up in College Station. Worth noting, Micah Hudson, dude can play a little bit. Just because he didn't have the year he wanted to have last year doesn't mean he's not a baller. Is currently the number 3 player overall in the transfer portal, regardless of position. I think that's worth noting. So Micah Hudson, again, there's a pick in for him right now to College Station. It's interesting when you talk about Texas A&M going forward here. As long as Mike Elko's the head coach and Colin Klein's the OC, they're going to be physical up front. They're going to run the football. Where they get scary is what we talked about yesterday, where they can add some matchups on the perimeter, start to challenge vertically, open up the pass game, and at that point, okay, then we can get you off balance and we can really make some magic here offensively. So Micah Hudson, a 5-star plus wide receiver, added into that mix would not be a negative thing by any stretch of the imagination for the folks out there. Now, here's a portal quarterback that jumped in. Fernando Mendoza from Cal. Over 3,000 yards this year. I believe he is currently the top quarterback available per us here at On3 in the transfer portal. Threw for 16 touchdowns last year to 6 interceptions. Whenever guys jump in the portal, one of the first things we look at is, okay, well, who was in the mix for them out of high school? And then where did they go to high school? Like, where are they from? Fernando Mendoza, from right around Miami's area. Miami now, with Cam Ward leaving the league, you wonder if they'll be in the portal quarterback market. Shannon Dawson, that air raid offense is an attractive system to play in, especially based on what Cam Ward did last year statistically. I don't know. I don't know if there's mutual interest, but if we're just putting the pieces together, if he wants to go back home and if Miami would have him, I think that could be an interesting fit. Fernando Mendoza, too, if y'all remember correctly, caught social media fire with his interview post-game after they beat Stanford in that rivalry game. 98 yards with my boys, baby. That interview enough to me is enough to go ahead and add Fernando Mendoza to my roster. So the portal continues to churn and have some movement. That's the latest when it comes to some of the visits and commitments. But as always, we'll keep you posted and in the know for all things transfer portal right here on the On3 YouTube channel on this show, The Hard Count. So again, make sure you are subscribed.